Welcome to Uxbridge Beat, the podcast where we feature the who's who of Uxbridge, Ontario. My name is Jennifer Neville-Campsell.
And I am Scott Campsell. Introducing our listeners to the people and places that make Uxbridge great has always been our goal. So it's even better when a community member approaches us to throw a spotlight on a topic that we had no idea about.
Lisa Cook is one such community member. Precious Minds is an organization which provides programming for youth and adults with developmental disabilities, and Lisa has now begun acting as a liaison between their clients and potential employers.
Finding good staff is always the goal of employers, and having an employee with special needs may not be a business owner's first choice. Lisa facilitates conversations with those business owners to help introduce them to their next possible staff member.
Let's find out what puts the beat into this very kind heart of Lisa Cook. I think today is perhaps our first, we'll call it a spin-off episode. You had contacted us after hearing Alicia Smith's interview, and Alicia is a Special Olympian, and she is very, very involved with Precious Minds.
Yes.
So take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alicia is, I'll go as far as saying a poster child for Precious Minds. She's a bright light. She is an athlete, a beautiful human, and someone who just gives it to you straight. She's confident and tells you exactly like it is. So I am a community member. I'm an HR professional, and I'm here as a friend of Precious Minds. I'm not actually a part of the Precious Minds board. I'm not paid by Precious Minds, but I've become involved with them over the years in a number of capacities through my HR profession. And I thought the Uxbridge Beat would be an opportunity to share with the community what Precious Minds does, and also invite some new conversations around how we as a community can support Precious Minds and their clients.
Okay, so let's dial it back. You've been raised in town locally?
Yes.
Okay.
Literally born and raised in Uxbridge.
And how did you get involved with Precious Minds?
I would say Precious Minds became known to me from a dear friend, Stephanie Weddle. She was one of the founders. And then over time, my nieces worked in their camps. I've met individuals through church who are a part of Precious Minds. And I think just as a member of the community, I had heard about it because I've, like you said, born and raised here. So Precious Minds is a 25-year-old organization that supports individuals in the Durham region who have developmental challenges, typically youth, and they offer programming for the individuals as well as their families.
So this is a regional thing. It's not just for the township.
It is a regional thing, but they happen to be located and work out of the Uxbridge area.
What are the requirements to be a client?
Again, I speak somewhat ignorantly because I'm not an official member of Precious Minds, but you need to have developmental challenges, and I think there are application processes to get into their camps, for example, because it involves funding. Where I see my world is an extension of one of their programs called Skills for Life, and that is a weekly program where they bring older participants in and they help them develop skills for life. So pre-employment skill sets. They all have jobs. They do different things. Many of you may have experienced or purchased products from the Precious Minds Skills for Life program. They do dryer balls. They make gift cards, beautiful work. They do a variety of things, and that is to help these individuals gain skills so that they may, if interested and able, gain meaningful employment in the future.
And that's where you come in, right?
It is. So as an HR professional, I did some work with Precious Minds, recruiting for them several years ago. But in the last 2 years, I retired from my corporate position and started my own consulting business. And a client of Precious Minds reached out to me and asked me to help their child find meaningful employment in the community. And so I started to do that, reaching out to employers, educating, talking openly, because I think we can talk about that later, but I think it is a nerve-wracking situation to hire someone who has developmental challenges or is neuroatypical, as some might say. And it was a really enlightening process. And I've since been contacted by other families, but really it's become a bit of a passion project. I think there's a really great opportunity for employers in the community to expand their horizons and see what different people have to offer.
So walk us through the process. At this point, let's say you have family A come to you with their child who is of employment age and of cognitive ability levels ready for employment.
Yep.
What's the process and how do you walk them through it and how do you walk an employer through it?
I'll back up slightly. Individuals, I am not taking work from Precious Minds. I'm looking to continue and be a continuation of Skills for Life. So as you can imagine, Precious Minds is a not-for-profit. They are funded, and their funding just simply does not allow them to do everything for these individuals. So Skills for Life is this great program. But then, like you said, Jennifer, I'm maybe contacted by an individual's family, and I simply will meet with them like we are right now, sitting around a dining room table, or it might be over the phone, understanding a little bit about the individual. What do you like? What are your passions? And the best part about these individuals with developmental challenges, and they're refreshingly frank about what they love and what they don't love. They can tell you, I don't like that, or they'll say, I tried that once and the person was mean to me and I didn't want to ever do it again, or I'm really good at this. And so you can really garner a picture of where they might fit in, where their passions are. And from speaking to them, you can often understand what some of their challenges are, whether that be verbally, or their parents are also generally very open and clear about what their child is capable and not capable of. Most individuals are not looking for full-time work. They're looking for a few hours a week or a few hours a day. And then based on that interview, I understand what they're looking for. And then we start to, sometimes we go on what I would call a road trip. We might walk through town. We might drive through town. Port Perry, Uxbridge have been my experiences, a little bit of Sunderland, and point out based on interest, hey, have you thought about working there? Have you thought about working there? And then we've done it a few different ways. I've reached out to the potential employers myself. I've had the client reach out depending on their circumstance and capabilities. And then we just start an open conversation. I've had phenomenal, and I feel it's important to highlight Second Wedge and Williamson's Uxbridge. They were incredibly open to one of my clients. They were open to me being a part of the conversation and really just speaking freely about what it might look like to have someone work for them on a part-time fractional basis.
So we just hired somebody for our front of house, I guess, a few months ago. Didn't even think about reaching out to Precious Minds. As a potential employer, how would we go about arranging that on our end?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. I mean, you can reach out to me. Again, I am sometimes paid by the families, but sometimes do this pro bono. It's of no cost to an employer. You could reach out to Precious Minds directly or simply advertise in the community and expand. Not all jobs are going to be a fit, but I think if we start the conversation using things like this podcast to get people thinking outside of the box, I think there's great opportunity. So reaching out to me, reaching out to Precious Minds, or just increasing your advertising in the community is a great way to start.
How does an employer take on an individual that may not be able to have the skill set to work as independently as you need them to?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I thank you for it, because I think that's exactly part of the problem with this situation is people are afraid. They're afraid to ask the questions. They're afraid to branch out. Our world is incredibly demanding. We expect perfection. We crucify people literally and figuratively for making a mistake or saying the wrong word and using the wrong terminology. So as an employer, I think it's about building blocks. It's about being open to someone. Maybe they're not going to be able to fill your full job description at first. You know, you may need someone who does A through E as far as tasks. And an individual with development challenges may only be able to take on A and B to start. And so that's where it can be a challenge for an employer, because often they look at it fiscally and say, I can't afford to hire two people potentially to cover one job. But what I would invite them to do is think about, how can we perhaps look at some of the tasks that some of our other employees are less interested in doing, and maybe their tools and experiences could be used elsewhere in the organization. Maybe one of our longer term employees could be out growing our business, while some of these individuals with developmental challenges could be taking on some of the basic building blocks and building their confidence to do the job. And then over time, they are able to take on A, B, C, D, and E of the job description. So that's where I think it's important. It is challenging fiscally, but there are ways. I think the other thing an employer needs to think about is the culture and the face they're presenting to the community. These individuals, again, I'll use Alicia as an example simply because I hope that your listeners have heard her interview. They're bright lights. They're such amazing people. And to have them as a face of your business could have incredible reciprocal benefits.
Are there government grants or any kind of subsidies?
There are government grants and subsidies, yes. I think if we speak frankly about it, they are intense sometimes to get and not always easy. But yes, you can get grants to hire these individuals. And you can also, the people that I've worked with have been open to the concept of volunteering for this meaningful work as well. So let's do a trial. Let's do a 3-month where I'm just going to come in and volunteer and get to know your business. And then we as a group can decide, is this a good fit? And it doesn't always have to be a good fit. That's the other thing employers need to realize. It's okay if it doesn't work out. But what if it does, is the question that I ask. What if it is an amazing fit and it's something that you wouldn't have considered before?
Hey Uxbridge, when I first opened Okamikai Martial Arts and Fitness in September of 1999, we only had a small dojo with tiny change rooms, and we only offered karate classes. We now have a 3,000 square foot training facility, and that's not including our spacious change rooms with showers inside Body Fit Health Club. We still offer karate, but we also offer classes in Aikido, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and weapons including Japanese sword. We also have great fitness classes that'll keep you motivated to take your training to the next level. As much as I'm proud of these accomplishments, our biggest success is in our programs for children. We're not just happy with kids winning medals, we want them to win at life. That means increasing their focus, self-discipline, self-confidence, and self-esteem, and not just their self-defense skills. We haven't slowed down in our almost 25 years of operation. We've gotten bigger, better, and we're just getting started. Now is the time for you and your family to get started along with us. Contact us today at Okamikai Martial Arts and Fitness at okamikai.com. Next two questions come as a pair. What is one of your success stories that you're most proud of? But then what is one of those stories that maybe didn't go the way you wanted?
Yeah, I mean, I think the success stories, and I want to be really clear, this is not a huge program. You know, I'm not talking about having helped dozens of people by any stretch, but a success to me could be as simple as starting a conversation. A success is seeing one of my clients can beer at Second Wedge and be at the same pace as the other people who were canning beer, and seeing them being well received and just talked to as any other client or as any other coworker, That's a success to me. A success is an employer being open to trying something and it not working. That's equally successful. Williamson's, open arms. We gave it a shot. We worked with a client there and the individual just decided it wasn't for them. That doesn't make it a failure in my mind, because that individual has now gained some experience that they can put on the resume.
And that's no different than any neurotypical
Any one of us.
Yeah. Going for a job and quitting 2 weeks later because they didn't like it.
And the thing I think about is, as employers yourselves, you know that it's really difficult to find engaged, dependable people. You've got this group of people who are so dedicated and just want to be included. If you can go through that small building phase that could be slower, yes, and that's where, and this is part of the conversation, someone like me could be there to hold their hand and bridge the gap between the employer and the client or new employee, again, at no cost to the employer. I'm there to help them get comfortable, make sure they're doing the job safely, make sure they're completing all their training on the computer, anything that you need them to do to be properly insured and trained. The possible outcome is good. That was a long-winded answer for success. And do I think there's been a failure? I don't think there's been a failure. I do think there have been a couple of opportunities where I wished the employer would relook at things, maybe look at who they partnered the employee up with and said, oh, I think I could have found someone better, someone more open, someone more capable of training. That would be the only potential failure, I would say.
And that's a learning curve on everybody's part.
Absolutely it is.
Speaking of learning curve, how much of a learning curve have you gone through since you started doing this?
A big learning curve. I mean, for me, I, like a lot of employers, fall victim to being fearful of using the right terminology, saying the wrong thing, putting fiscal budgetary restraints ahead of other things, because that's a reality. I didn't realize it was becoming a passion project. I really, when the first client reached out to me, I said, I would love to be able to do this pro bono, but I spend a great deal of time volunteering in our community for the hospital auxiliary, and I just didn't feel I could do any more free work. And then the next time I had a client call me or I was typing something, I realized I was becoming more and more passionate about it. And I'm laughing now thinking about it because I literally was giggling at myself like, oh, you love this. You love this work. I'm a big fan of analogies, and I'm trying to think of the right analogy. When the first time you fell in love and you wanted to shout it from the rooftop, or you can picture the movie, the rom-com where the person's so in love, or Tom Cruise jumping on the couch when he was interviewing with Oprah. That's sort of what I felt like about these individuals. Like, if people would just give them a chance, we could learn so much.
Okay, we're going to do something called rapid fire. And I think since you've been a lifer here in Uxbridge, you may have some interesting answers. Winter or summer?
Summer.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Favorite restaurant in town? This gets everybody.
It gets everybody because there's a lot of
Don't want to say the wrong
ones.
thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, the facial expressions that go with everybody. So when we have a political person in like Dave Barton or Bruce Garrett or like Christy Honey, and what's your favorite restaurant? And they all they look like deer in the headlights. Like, no.
Yeah, don't make me answer that. Yeah, I don't think I have one. I will say Fig, because I aspire to be a better eater and I love everything they offer, especially their hummus. And I would say Urban because just last week I had the most amazing mango shrimp salad there. So that's where I'll finish, but I could go on.
If you had one business in town where you would say, let's try them first as a potential employer, who would that be?
I would like my answer to be some of the smaller businesses that have great customer facing. Like I can just imagine some of the Precious Minds individuals working at a store like Lemonade Stand where they've got, or the Roxy, where it's a fun experience, and to have that be added to the fun. But interestingly, Starbucks is very high on a lot of clients' lists. They really like the idea of working at Starbucks. And I have not successfully placed anyone at Starbucks. And I'd like to be able to put a notch in the belt and say, yes, we had some success there.
Do you think that that's on the part of the employer or the employee?
I wouldn't say it's actually on either right now. I think we haven't properly explored the opportunity. I do think that larger corporations are held more tightly to specific job descriptions and specific budgetary objectives. Do I agree with it? No, but I think they are. And so it's maybe harder for a franchisee or a store manager to think outside the box because they may just not have the autonomy to do so.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. And I'm not sure if it is in fact true or if it's just the perception of the reality. It's a stressful time. It's a stressful time to be a business owner. It's a stressful time to be a manager of a business. We don't want to do the wrong thing. And we have all seen the social media nightmares that are created by making a mistake, right? I mean, the world is not a very forgiving place. And so
we keep on going back to that. So what give me some risks. What am I like as a potential employer, maybe you bring me a client, you say they're developmentally challenged. Would you be willing to hire them? What am I afraid of? Because I hear there's an employee who is looking for a job and they might be the hardest worker in the room. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't I want to hire them? What am I afraid of?
I'm afraid that they're going to take too much of my time. I'm afraid that they're going to get overwhelmed and be stressed by all of the things that I'm asking them to do. I'm afraid that I'm going to use the wrong terminology when I'm describing their capabilities or inabilities.
A lot of these valid? Are a lot of these valid? Like,
I think they are valid. They shouldn't be valid, but they are valid. They shouldn't be valid because if you are a genuine individual with good intent, you shouldn't be afraid of how you act or what you say. Day to day, if you act as a principled individual, you should be fine. But I think, again, the world is very harsh and it can be harsh. But I just encourage people to go the other way. The world can be so amazing. What else am I afraid of? I'm afraid of it not working out and I have to terminate this person. I'm afraid that I have to give performance feedback to this individual, and they're either not going to understand or they're going to take it personally and get upset.
Can you act as a liaison between the employer and the employee?
Absolutely. And that is a conversation I have with these clients. As you're learning, you're not always going to know everything, and your employer is going to have to tell you, hey, you didn't do that right. And we're not going to take it personally, and we're going to listen, and we're going to improve together. So yes, I think that liaison opportunity is the biggest piece of this puzzle.
Sorry, I sort of took you down a rabbit hole there for long-winded answers.
That's our rapid fire. Like, I mean,
I feel all of my answers have been so long-winded.
No.
Editing work for Scott.
What's your favorite clothing store in Uxbridge?
Anyone who knows me would know I would be lying if I said anything other than Chances Are. I volunteer about 15 hours a week at Chances Are. Again, I believe people can see a smile when they're listening and they can't see me. I absolutely love Chances Are. I love absolutely everything about what they represent. The people that work there, the fact that all of the proceeds go to our local hospital, the fact that it has environmental benefits from repurposing clothing. So yeah, without question, it is my favorite
What a
store.
Fantastic opportunity that they're moving into that new big location.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
Maybe it'll become lots of other people's favorite store too.
Yes, I hope it does.
What's your favorite thing about Uxbridge in itself as a town?
My favorite thing about Uxbridge is the sense of community, the passion that individuals have, whether it be, like I said, for Chances Are, for Precious Minds, for the Uxbridge Beat podcast. I mean, just the fact that these kinds of things come out of the woodwork from a community that is built, the talent that's here. I mean, Jennifer, I saw your choir perform at the 150 firefighter memorial. Everything about it is amazing. I'm getting emotional. I love this town.
And what can we do better?
Well, we can all be better. Let's just take a collective breath and look at each other as individuals and see the special gifts that each of us has as each individual person. I think the world would be a better place if we could just take a breath.
When you die and you go to heaven, what do you hope God says to you?
I hope that God says, you did good. Thanks for having uncomfortable conversations to make the world a better place.
If there's one person who's alive right now that you could sit down and have a coffee with, not necessarily somebody even that you know, but somebody that you could have some time with them, who would that be?
Probably Brene Brown. She's a social worker, shame researcher, and author. I don't even know how many books she has now, but I think I own every one of them. She's taught me a lot about humans, and more importantly, perhaps, she's taught me a lot about myself. So I'd love the opportunity to meet her and learn more.
And somebody who's passed away that you'd like some time with?
Ooh, any one of my relatives for whom I was too young and immature to listen to the stories. Now, as I'm older, I'd listen more closely. Yeah.
Thank you for spending the time for us and make us listen closely.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my email and giving me the opportunity.
Lisa is obviously very passionate about this role that she plays, but let's remind our listeners that most of what she's doing is pro bono. It's volunteer work. And not only does she volunteer in this element, she volunteers at Chances Are and at the hospital. And that volunteer aspect is something we'd like to touch on in this outro and put a challenge out to our community. Volunteers are so important. They drive so many of our organizations, everything from theater groups to music groups to the hospital, Chances Are. And we'd like to know two things. Number one, what are the organizations that could use more volunteers? How can we best allocate people to services? And the second thing is, who are the volunteers that you've come across who have made a huge impact in your life and here in Uxbridge?
It's part of creating a legacy. Once we're dead and gone, people are going to remember us from the acts that we did for others. They're not going to remember those who are socially isolated that just want to stay in their house all the time. Think of the big downloads that we've received on our podcast so far. There are people like Dave Barton, who has not only volunteered so much around the community, but he's become mayor, and that's a big top download list. Pat Higgins, that episode, so huge. And it was him that created the Huck Finn Fishing Derby. Chris Johnston, we're doing choir risers for the Northern Trails Vocal Connection, moving risers into the church, and people are stopping to say hello to him. Why do they know him? Just because he's so popular and he's helped the community so much by donating his time for the Legion. Chris Hobson, another one who donates to the Legion. These people, their names are popular with people in the community because of the fact that they give to the community.
And there are so many that we don't know. So we'd like you, dear listener, to educate us. Who do we need to know about as incredible volunteers? Reach out to us. Send us an email on the Uxbridge Beat website. Send us a personal Facebook or Instagram message. You can call our office at 905-852-1521. And we'd love to communicate. We'd love to hear from you. And let's get this going. Let's find out who the makers and doers and the volunteers of Uxbridge who make our community so great. Who are they?
Yeah, we do have a website, uxbridgebeat.ca, and I just want to let somebody know, if you are listening, it got brought to my attention that you had put a comment on one of the podcast episodes, and I know we had a conversation going, and it was, I guess, a little bit over a week and a half when you had responded and you went through the episode. I didn't realize that until just yesterday. So I think just in the future, if people want to contact us, there is a way to email us through the website, and that is probably a better way to contact us. Or we also have a Facebook page, and you can message us through the Facebook page. Unfortunately, I just didn't get the notification, and deeply sorry about that. The other thing, like Jennifer said, we can always go through our Okamikai office. Okamikai@gmail.com is a good way to email us. But yeah, let's get some names, and I'm all in. We love promoting the businesses, but I think in the end, the people that really make a difference in this community, that's what this podcast is about, and we really want to put the spotlight on them.
Thank you, Lisa, for bringing your spotlight to us.
This has been a Capsule Broadcasting production. Uxbridge Beat has had repeat guests, and now its first spin-off episode. I'm totally in for something like that having to do with Second Wedge or Thunder Ridge Bison Farm. I have to admit that my wallet is a little nervous about the Rutledge Jewelers episode, though. Merry Christmas, MasterCard.